Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Broken Crayon Still of Color podcast. I am your host, Tara, and I am here with my special guest. Y'all, we are already cutting up. So today's topic is different. It's a different perspective. I shouldn't say that the topic is different. It's just a different perspective on the topic. It is something that we talk about often. It is also something that we have both agreed that people don't really dwell on enough, I guess, about. So today's topic we have titled The Color of Marriage or The Colors of Marriage. So, full disclaimer, Brandon is suffering from allergies, so he's a little stopped up, but he is still going to talk as much as he can. I want to start off by saying one thing that I've never heard anyone say. I'm probably the first person that will openly admit this, and I'm okay with that. Marriage is ghetto, and it is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Um, Before me and Brandon got married, of course, people were excited. Marriage is great, marriage is beautiful, and it is. Full disclaimer, it is. But nobody really told us what we were getting ourselves into. Nobody gave us the raw skinny of it all. And that's why we're here. We are your two brown angels that that have come today to give you the raw truth about marriage. Whether you are looking to be married, preparing to get married, or even if you're just married and you just want, a partner to agree with. That's why we're here. So, Brandon, give me the idea that goes through a man's head when he is preparing to ask someone to marry. Like
Well,
what is he thinking? How does he come to this decision? Like what happened? What goes on?
I can tell you what I was thinking. Um,
That works too.
because what should come across a person's mind is not necessarily what should. What I guess my thing is that what should go across their mind is not necessarily being factored in because you're lost in the love of that individual and you're not really thinking uh, coherently about what you need to do because at the end of the day, contrary to popular belief, marriage is intended to be a lifelong commitment. Um, so my thought process was that um, me and you have been dating for a while.
Hmm.
That's one thing, but that can't be the only thing. Let me put that disclaimer out there. Just because you've been dating someone for a long time doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready for marriage, or if that person is the one that you're supposed to marry. So don't use the time length of your dating season as a justifiable reason to get married. Um, First thing I had to do, I had to pray about it, to be completely honest with you. Because if we're being honest with each other, and if you speak to people that have been married for some time, whether it's a day or whether it's 50 years, no one is truly ready to say, I do,
Mm-mm.
right? It sounds good in the moment. At the wedding, you see all your family and all your friends, everyone's there to support you. Congratulations, getting all the gifts. Yeah, yeah. But the essence behind the I do is always a present tense. So your I do is renewed pretty much every day. So that's one of the things I had to kind of contemplate, and one of the things that came to mind, and I believe that the Lord kind of shared that with me. He said, "If the Tara you know today, flaws and all, if she never changes, if she stays the same way that she is, even the things that you hate about her, is there if she never changes those things, do you still want to be with her for the rest of your life?" And so I had to really contemplate that because we had some challenging times in our dating. Broke up a few times, um, and I had to realize that even as she was presently constructed, I still wanted to be with her for the rest of my life. Like I had already knew that that was the one that I was supposed to be with. So
Aw.
either way, either way, that should be the number one thing that flows through a man's mind and even a woman's mind, because I think sometimes they feel like once I marry them, I can change them. And yeah, there may be some aspects that you guys may be able to kind of evolve into, but the question becomes is that if that person never evolves into that, are they still worth you considering marrying them? So that was a few things that came across my mind.
Okay. So I think for a woman, for me at that time, as Brandon said, we dated for a long time, and we dated for about 7 years. The end of my high school career, in college, um, and that time frame. I was not thinking that deep into it. I think
Your
for women,
your high school career?
I was
Ah,
not I was not thinking that deep into it. I
I
think
like
for
that. I like
yeah,
that.
I think for women, the idea of marriage was kind of thrown upon us since we've been little girls. If you think about Disney movies, all the Disney princesses toward the end got married. They had on the gowns, their hair was fixed, they had on makeup, and they
Right,
got their husband at the end of the movie.
right,
So even as a kid watching Cinderella, Snow White, those movies, the girl got the guy.
right.
And so I think with women, we kind of, since being a little girl, we wanted that. We wanted to dress up. We wanted to get the guy. Um, I don't think women think about it that deep when it comes to marriage. It's just like I'm with this man. I love him. I want to have his kids. I want to spend the rest of my life with him. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I can say for me, I think I was ready early on, not really understanding the depth of what I was ready for. Um, Growing up in church, marriage is also kind of put on a pedestal. Um,
Right.
and then I got older and realized, some of these people that are married really don't want to be.
Mm,
But marriage is kind of put on this pedestal, and so you are taught that's what you should want.
right.
You don't shack up, you get married. So for me, I think I was ready for that. I had graduated college or was about to graduate college, and it just was like, okay, now is my time. Um, and it wasn't necessarily the glitz and glamour of the wedding because, full disclaimer, I did not really want a wedding. I'm a little shy. I'm a little reserved. Hard to
Mm,
tell.
mm,
I'm a little shy. I'm a
mm,
little reserved.
mm,
So I really didn't want a wedding. I didn't want the attention to be on me. I'm also clumsy at times. I was like, oh, what if I trip? I was thinking of those type of things. So anyway, I just wanted that status. I loved him, but at the same time, it was like, oh my God, I want to be a wife. So I don't think women think about it that deep. Um, as far as the forever piece of it, we think about it, but not to the point where it's really at the forefront of our minds. If that makes sense.
makes sense.
Um, so leading up into marriage, I would say, first of all, let's go back. When two people are dating,
Mhm.
I think the woman may or may not already have the idea if they want to spend the rest of their life with that person pretty early on.
Right.
Not sure about men. Men are a little fickle, their minds are a little fickle. It's kind of hard to read them at times. So I can't speak for a man. I'm not a man. But I would say for a woman, I think maybe way before a man, we kind of decide, okay, I kind of like this guy. This could be forever. We're probably thinking about that in the first couple months to a year, I would say. How
Mm,
long would you say it took you since you said, you knew you wanted to spend the rest of your life with me? How
mhm.
long did it take you to realize that?
Is this
This
a
is a
judge
th-
free?
this is a judge-free, safe space.
It it took some years. I'm not gonna
Okay.
lie because we first started dating. Like I said, we were high school, college. So at that early an age, you're not really like you're enjoying the moment, right?
Mhm.
So you're not thinking about, okay, do I need to make a lifetime decision at 21, 22, 18, 19, 20? No. I mean, I know for myself I wasn't thinking about that. It just and the crazy thing is that I didn't realize we dated that long until we actually sat down and was planning the wedding and we're having to tell our our story to our um, videographer, um, that it had been 7 years that we had been in some type of relationship. I mean, granted, there was breakups here and there,
Mhm.
but for a complete 7 years.
I mean, you making it sound like we broke up 10 times.
Oh, it was a couple. It was a couple.
It was a couple.
It was a couple. And none of them was my fault. But either way, um,
Pause. Stop there. Let's discuss that.
this
Um,
this is not the form.
all right. That'll be another podcast for another day, I
Maybe
guess.
season two, I
All
guess.
right, season 2, we'll tell that story.
but but yeah, so you're not really thinking about that in that moment. Now, as you said, that women are more kind of geared to have uh, that thought,
Mhm.
you know, pushed and drilled into their head at an early age. I mean, you're dealing with Barbie dolls, and Barbie had to have Ken, and Ken had to have the dream house, the Barbie dream house, the dream car, and all
Mhm.
that. So you're already geared towards that. Us, on the other hand, as men, as young boys, we just had action figures, and if we had the whole cast of a TV show, or just um, certain pieces here and there, and all they would do was just fight with them, wrestle with them, climb, show, host them up in the air and let them fly, and all that. No, there was
Mhm.
never no home kind of aspect behind it. Like, oh, you have to. Batman has to marry Batgirl, or Superman has to marry Superwoman. Like we didn't even have female action figures.
Mhm.
So I think that idea was drilled into you guys' head more, and so even geared to Hollywood movies, the certain love stories, like they're then at the end they get married and they just drive off and they were like, oh, congratulations. And so those kind of images um are drilled in you guys' head at an earlier age. So
Mhm.
and I think that would allows y'all to mature a little bit faster than we do, because you're already been programmed to think about the future. And men
Hmm.
sometimes are thinking about at that present time. Not in all cases, but just as it relates to what we're talking about today with marriage.
So you mentioned that, girls kind of growing up, we had Barbie, Ken, Dream House,
Right,
car.
right.
Guys just kind of have action figures and things
Right.
of that nature. Could that possibly be a reason why some men are emotionally unavailable at times? Because one, you have, okay, so it's probably a couple aspects of this. One,
Hmm.
men are kind of taught not to show emotion,
Right.
you know. So with that,
Hmm.
and just kind of having action figures, fighting, that plus
Hmm.
that. Would you say that's the reason why some men are emotionally unavailable and just don't really connect with the thought of marriage early on as some do?
I would say that it does have its place. I wouldn't say it's the end all be all, but it does play some factor into it, because a boy is taught to be a man in every facet. So if a father is raising a son, he's raising him to be a direct replica of what he is. So if he's not emotional, and he doesn't, get into that emotional aspect, he doesn't want his son to do that.
Mm,
So, um, and even though it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can, rear its ugly head by the time the person gets older, because now that man does not know how to express himself in a emotional way without coming off appearing soft. And then at the same time, there are women. in I'm trying to choose my words carefully. There are women that necessarily wouldn't know how to handle an emotional man. They can because they've been introduced to a passionate man,
Mhm.
and sometimes that passion can turn into domestic violence.
Mhm.
So they're accustomed to seeing that more than just the emotional side of a man, and we're not taught to actually show that because we actually have to um, bear the weight. Um, Even though nobody told us that we had to, but we feel like we have to be kind of like that masculine, that strong aspect of the relationship. So if the woman is emotional, he can't be emotional too. So we just kind of suppress
Mhm.
it and just move on and deal with it in our own unique way.
Okay.
I hope that made sense.
No, it makes sense. Okay, so you get to the wedding.
Hmm.
You say, "I do." The other
Right,
party says, "Me too."
right.
You eat. You go off in your vehicle. Um, you're married for the first year. Most people
Hmm.
call the first year. Some people call the first couple of years the honeymoon phase. They call it the honeymoon phase because, of course, when you go on your honeymoon, everything is great. You just got married.
Hmm.
You've traveled somewhere together. You don't have to worry about bills during that period of time. You don't have to worry about obligations during that period of time. You're enjoying each other. Whether you're going for a couple days, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, you're enjoying
Hmm.
each other in that week. So most people call the honeymoon phase of marriage the first year to, I would say, 3 years,
Right.
right? And then year four comes.
Hmm.
And sometimes it happens before year four. But for us, I think it was year four
Hmm.
where we were like, what did we get ourselves into? What is this? Now, mind you,
Pandemic.
the pandemic, yeah, I don't even want to blame the pandemic. Mind you, Riley was born um within the first 2 years of our marriage. Um, I think we were coming up on our
Second.
second year anniversary. Yeah. Um,
Is that supposed to be born either the day
she was
of or the
supposed to
day
be
after?
born. No, it was the day before or the day after.
Day after.
Yeah, she was supposed to be born 9/11.
Mhm.
Um, which would have been our second year anniversary. So we had her that July. So we had Riley within the first 2 years of our marriage, and everything for the most part was still kind of
Right.
easy peasy.
Right.
Year four came, and I don't know if it was the child or the pandemic or a little bit of both. But it was at that moment we realized, oh, this is real.
Hmm.
This is real. We said till death do us part.
Right.
And it wasn't that we hated each other and that, well, I didn't hate him. I don't know how he felt
Ah!
about me. How he felt about me.
No
Um
comment.
See, we told you we was gonna tell you the raw truth. You heard it here first. Brandon hated me our fourth year of marriage. Um
Said no comment.
it was within that first fourth year of marriage where we weren't really vibing with each other. We weren't really seeing eye to eye. We just was like, you go your way, I go my way. I'll see you when I see you. We didn't split up. We didn't, like I said, we didn't hate each other. We weren't arguing.
Hmm.
It was just a point of time where we realized what we had.
Right.
And with marriage, I oftentimes like to tell people who are about to get married, it's going to start. And I don't do this because I don't want to scare anybody from the idea of it. I just want them to be knowledgeable. And I oftentimes say it's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. It is a full time job. When you connect yourself with another person permanently, or lifers, as they like to say, and you guys are living together, you have to accept what comes with living with that person. You have to accept what comes with throughout the years. This person can change and their ideas about certain things can change because we are evolving creatures. We evolve, our thoughts evolve, our desires evolve, just things about us evolve. And once you get to that point where you're starting to see things and you're just like, I don't really like how you do that, you have to decide what you're going to do. Are you going to tell them, I don't really like when you do that? And if they don't change, is that a deal breaker? So it's certain things that you're starting to do, and you get. So I would say within the fourth year of marriage, I realized I didn't like the way Brandon brushed his teeth. It bothered me, and I said something about it, and he looked at me and said nothing, and kept doing that which I didn't like.
And I still do it to this day.
And he still does it to this day, and it still grinds my gears.
But my breath is never stink.
I is twitching thinking about it. He still does it to this day. But
Is my
that
breath ever stink?
your breath is never stink. And but I just don't like the method of which he brushes his teeth. He does not like that when I do my makeup, I leave my stuff on the sink counter after doing my makeup. If I'm in a rush, yes, I leave everything out. My pencils, my brushes, my cleansers, everything is just all out on my side of the sink. And he doesn't like that. And there's probably other stuff that he doesn't like, but he will get a chance to voice his qualms with me when it's his turn. But it's one of those things where are you going to keep bringing it up? If I kept bringing it up to Brandon, I don't like the way you brush your teeth. I don't like the way you brush your teeth. He's been brushing his teeth like that before I ever came on the scene. Do I expect him now because I say I don't like the way you brush your teeth to change? If I hate it so much, I could leave. I don't hate it that much. I just won't be in the same room when he's brushing his teeth. Simple fix.
Mhm.
Um, but it's at that moment in marriage where you realize, okay, I got myself into this.
Right.
This is for real. This is not glitz and glamour. This is real life stuff. You know,
Mhm.
you're gonna get hardships in your marriage regardless. You may have financial hardships. You may have um, boundary issues. It's gonna be hardships in your marriage.
Mhm.
But what happens? I want you to think about this. What happens when it's not a hardship and the hardship is within you?
Mm.
When the hardship is you realizing, okay, I'm evolving. Something's happening. I don't know what it is. What do you do at that point? Because I think after my children, after one was born and then the second was born, my thoughts and stuff started changing.
Mhm.
How I cared about my appearance changed. How I cared about the things I did changed. You're changing. What do you do when the hardship is you? Because that can be a hardship to somebody.
Right.
Somebody married you one way, and halfway through, you changed as an individual. Your thought process has changed.
Mhm.
What do you do then when the hardship is you? That's something to think about because you yourself will become the hardship at that point.
Mhm.
And you have to realize, okay, I'm changing. This person may be changing too. Are we changing together? You may not always change together. They may still be the person you married year one, and by year six, seven, you've evolved into a different person. They're the same person.
Right.
What happens then? Um, Brandon, I guess, we're in the middle of this phase now. We're coming up on year 8, and we're realizing different things about each other. Is it 8 already? We're coming up on it. We're pushing to it. We're like at it. We are at it now. Come September. You should know that. We'll talk about that later. But but
Just make sure you knew.
I know. Um, but what helps when you realize that the hardship is you, and nothing is necessarily going on physically
Mhm.
within the marriage per se,
Mhm.
but you're evolving and changing. What should a person do at that point? What would you think as a man? I guess I should say. What do you think he should expect, not expect? How can he handle the evolving life?
Again, I think it kind of goes back to some of the things I said in the beginning. That I had to ask myself a question that if um, Tara never changed, would I still be willing to spend the rest of my life with her? And the answer was yes. However, when we're presented with questions like that or that thought process, we're only thinking about the changes that's going to make us happy. So the person is going to change,
Hmm.
and they have that right to change. Let's be honest. You as an individual, in your 10 years old, you're not the same person by the time you're 20. You're
Hmm.
not the same person as you're 30. You're not the same person as 40. So if you're changing individually, whether it be your career, whether it be your ideologies or whatever the case may be, if you're evolving as an individual, why do you expect the marriage to stay the same?
Mm,
See what I'm saying? So the changes are going to occur, but the thing that you have to brace for is for the changes that you didn't necessarily expect, right? Because you might have thought there was nothing wrong with that. Why are you changing that part? But I wanted you to change this part. But the part that that person is changing for their own individual life is there to make them a better person. Because at the end of the day, even though you're married, and I know they say two became one. Yeah, in a sense, as far as union, but at the same time, you're still two different individuals.
mhm,
So what if that change that you wanted your spouse to make is going to make them uh more depressed in that aspect, but you're happy.
mhm,
So I'm just going to use this. I mean, granted, this is very far fetched. If I change the way I'm just using the example that you used earlier. If I change the way I brush my teeth because you said something in year 4, and I'm depressed because that change was not something I wanted to do. Yeah, you're happy, and so what I'm doing now is suppressing my feelings in order to make you happy.
mhm,
And your spouse is not there to make you happy.
mm,
Happiness is within yourself. And if you're happy about yourself, you're able to be a better spouse to your wife or your husband. So I think we only brace for the changes that we deem is necessary,
mhm,
and we don't see that the person needs to change in order to be a better person for them overall, in order to be a better husband, in order to be a better wife. So with that, you have to give grace, right?
mm,
You have to understand, and that's why communication is so important. You have to understand why this person feels like they need to change this. Because if we're being honest, sometimes we make changes in our lives based on uh, trauma that we've had throughout our lives, and so we may feel a need that it needs to be changed. But what is the foundation? What is the root of behind why you're changing? Why are you changing your appearance? Is there some insecurity about your own body? Or is there insecurity that you think that I don't approve of how you look, or what you say, or how you smell, and things of that nature? So you have to be willing to actually sit down and say, okay, I see that you're changing in this area. What's going on? Why? And then once you actually determine that the root is sincere and is solely to make that person a better person individually, then your job now in that next step is to support.
mhm,
You may not always have to understand it, but you can offer a level of support. Um, so I think that's the main thing that you have to do is sit down, have the conversation, make sure that the root of it, the the foundation of it is sincere, and what the end game is for that evolution, and then you support that person um, in that feat. And if you do not understand and you do not like it, you still have to express that as well,
mhm,
because you can't just go along with the get along, and then 4 years later you're saying I didn't like when you changed that. That was 4 years ago. Why didn't you say anything?
mhm,
Because I was trying to support you. No, support doesn't mean you become a silent partner,
mhm,
right? You still have to express how you feel about it, and then determine what is going to be that happy medium between that person's evolution and you getting accustomed to that person's evolution, or getting something out of that evolution that you think is necessary, so that way not only is that person evolving for herself individually, but she's using some of those same factors, those same principles, to evolve holistically, in order to better the union.
mm. That's good. I
Thank
would
you.
I would even go as far as to say that if and husband or wife,
Mhm.
if you find that your spouse is evolving, um, one, I think a lot of times in life in general, not
Right,
just marriages and relationships and friendships and things of that nature, I think a lot of insecurities play a part
right,
in the way we think about things.
right,
And I would tell anyone that's, you know, dating, thinking about dating, married, thinking about getting married,
right,
make sure that your insecurities are handled. Um, and I say that because a lot of times that insecurity drives the decisions we make.
right,
It drives what we do within the marriage or the partnership. It drives how we think about the other person. Um, Insecurities would have you thinking, "Oh, he brought new cologne. Some female must have told him he smelled good, and now he's buying all this different cologne."
mhm,
No, it
mhm,
could very well be that he likes cologne.
mhm,
Insecurities are feeling like you have to go through their phone.
mhm.
Insecurities is it plays a part in everything that we do, and I think that can drive a wedge between the two individuals as well. Not to mention that, with your insecurities, if you find that your spouse is evolving and their mindset is changing on different things and their appearance is changing, that's not for you to become upset or mad
Right,
or, well, why are they changing their appearance? And,
right,
must be trying to impress somebody else.
right.
No, they actually are trying to do it for you.
Mhm,
They're wanting to look better for you. They want to, you know, they could just be evolving for themselves.
mhm.
There's nothing wrong with self-evolvement.
Right,
Um, for women, after we have kids, our bodies are not what they used to be sometimes. Some
mhm.
people's body can snap back. Not everybody's body can snap back.
Mine,
Hand
mine,
raised.
mine did.
Not everybody's body can snap back. We're working on it though. But um those are some insecurities that go along with it. So, we're trying to navigate our way through that. And I would think for a woman probably, and I don't know if this is scientifically true or not, I would say a woman probably evolves more times in their lifetime than a man does. Um, with our hair, I evolve maybe twice a month with my hair. I'm gonna have something different. With the way we dress, the way we think, the way we act, things like that. I would say for a woman who finds that, she's lost herself maybe within the marriage, because that is very easy to do. You married, so you still have the husband that you need to connect with, and then the kids are pulling on you, and then everybody else is pulling on you
Right,
to find yourself,
right,
get back to you, whatever that means to you. Um, I think that keeps you grounded and it makes you a better partner
right,
and a better parent and just an overall better individual.
right.
I don't know if men lose themselves within a marriage. Would you say that a man can lose themselves within being the protector and provider of a household?
I would say yes, they can, but it's not always um as frequent as a spouse or a wife. Um, I think we lose ourselves because we're making sure that, because in all essence, I look at it this way: if you, Rye, and Sky are good, then I'm good. But that doesn't always mean that I'm doing what I need to do in order to protect my mental or my self care, or making sure that I'm evolving or doing the things that I want to do. But I think for men that is the major priority. As long as the family is good, we can come back and address our stuff at a later time. And sometimes we never get back to it. And so our evolution kind of happens later on, because once the kids are older and self sufficient, once the wife is um, got things set up the way that she wants it, then I guess that's why men have their midlife crisis at a later age, because their whole mind and thought process is that I have to provide whatever my wife or whatever my children need, whatever they need, I have to morph it into that.
Hmm.
So if they need protection, I have to be the protector. If they need provision, I have to be the provider. If they need a shoulder to cry on, I have to provide my shoulder. And so you bear all those things in order to make sure that they're good, because that at least gives you some level of peace of mind. But you go years and years without reflecting and turning that mirror back on you and say, okay, what do you need?
Mm,
Right? So not like I said, I think that what leads to a lot of midlife crisis by the time they turn 40, by the time they turn 50, because they're realizing that they've given their life basically to an act of service. Um, and I think that's why I would say that most men's love language is acts of service, because that's what we have rendered in order to show our wives and show our children that we love them. We make the
mm,
necessary adjustments, we make necessary sacrifices in order to say, I'm going to do this in order to make them happy. I'm going to do this to make sure that they are okay. But then when it comes to, okay, what about you? How are you doing? You're like, yeah, I'm making it. I'm good. But I, I think I think that answers your question.
okay. So we talked about, for the most part, marriage being ghetto, and one of the hardest things that we've had to do. It's a full-time job. But what happens when you are in the middle of it
Hmm.
and maybe it comes to the decision that, you know what, this is not working out?
Hmm.
What should the couple do if they come to that decision? You know what, uh, this is not working out.
I,
What should they, or how should they process that before jumping straight into that decision?
well, I think the first thing is that you're going to have to come to an understanding that you both are at fault. Don't try to divvy up the blame and saying, "Hey, well, 30% of it's your fault, 7% is my fault," or vice versa. You have to have some level of culpability, because at the end of the day, if you're saying, and again, I'm not speaking against anyone that got a divorce. I mean, things happen, life happens. But what I'm saying is that if you said God told you that this was your wife, or if you said I believe that this is the one that God has for me, then you also have to admit that you both didn't do the necessary things that you needed to do in order to make sure that um, that decision lasted for the duration of your life, right? So you have to have some level of accountability and say, you know what, I didn't do everything right.
Hmm.
You didn't do everything right. Here's what I did wrong. Here's what I believe that you did wrong. And then allow your spouse to say, okay, here's what I did wrong, and here's what I think that you did wrong. And at the end of that conversation, um, seek counseling, right? Um, I know that's kind of a taboo thing in the church, but we see, and I never understood it, because we seek a professional for everything else. When we're having issues with our teeth, we go see a professional called a dentist or orthodontist. You have problems with your eyes, you go see the orthopedic, no,
Mm-mm. Optometrist.
optometrist. Orthopedic is your foot. So if you have an issue with your feet, you go see them. So we got professionals that we see for everything else. But when it comes to marriage, go to God about it. Pray about it. Pray about it. Go in your secret closet. He's your counselor. He's the wonderful counselor. That's true. But he's also a healer of everything else. So if you have a toothache, you say, Lord, I want you to heal my tooth. Heal my tooth, Lord. And you just stay there in prayer. Lord, heal my tooth. But he's already made provision for you down the street. And your employer has made provision by making sure that you're properly insured for dental coverage. So
Fact.
it never made sense to me, and I may get in trouble for this in certain church circles, but it's the truth. But you have to be willing to actually bring someone in that is non-biased, that doesn't know you from a can of paint, and even if the person knows you, we've done this on one time before, that we went to someone, or a couple that we um, know have been married for a long time, and we knew that they may have, a bias one towards another. So what we did was we flipped the story. So
Mhm.
I'm I gave the scenario as if my decisions were Tara's and Tara's decisions was mine,
Mhm.
just to see how they would actually rule in their overall advice. And what we determined that is if they ruled to the one that they already had a bias to, then we'll automatically know that they're not necessarily
Mhm.
giving sound advice. They're just going with the person that they trust the most. So have those people in your life, and like I said, have that professional. Because truth be told, full disclosure, we have went through counseling.
Mhm.
We went through a season of counseling during the pandemic because there were some unresolved things and some unrealistic expectations.
Mhm.
And you start to learn more about yourself in those couple sessions because sometimes while you're in the heat of the thing, only thing you're thinking about is I want to win. I want to let them see my point and agree with me. Not necessarily saying I want to understand that what I said in my delivery may not have been the best, and that shut off the line of communication and full comprehension.
Mhm.
So all those things come into play. So um, when you get to that point, that's the things that you need to reflect back on. But again, I go back to the aspect that I said at the beginning, towards the beginning, that you have to renew your I do. So it has to be something that's daily. Don't wait till stuff just pile up. Then you say, "Oh, I can't take it anymore," because now you're trying to pick up manure with a spoon instead of because you don't have a shovel. You can't just dig everything. Everything has to be done piece by piece, and you don't want to. Some people don't want to do that work that has been pretty much going unchecked for years.
Mhm.
So make it a daily process. Check in. Hey, what's going on? And I think we make more of a conscious effort to do that now. Um, at the end of every day, just talking about how's work, how are you? Are you good? And we're able to actually have that communication a little bit more. And then when we have those moments of disagreement or conflict, we're able to stay in the moment and get those things addressed. And if we can't address it that night or resolve it that night, then
Mhm.
we move on to the next day. But at the end of the day, I myself, I can speak for myself. I'm not going to let something go on for months and months and months, unlike somebody else, which I know. Like she'll rather
Ooh.
just let it blow over, and then we're having the same conversation, 2 or 3 months down the line. Um, and even in that, that's something I had to learn that I can't overwhelm someone that's not ready to talk about a situation. So
And I can be easily overwhelmed depending on what the topic is.
yeah, so you have to take it bit by bit by bit because if you don't, you're going to be looking 40 years into your marriage and realize that you have been dreading the idea of marriage for the past 20 years. And now you got to
Mm.
go back 20 years. And by that time, that person may not even recall what you're talking about and can't even put themselves back in that moment because so much time has passed.
Mhm.
So don't think that time is going to heal all wounds. It doesn't. That's my TED talk.
I would say just to piggyback off what Brandon said. Um, I mentioned that marriage was probably one of the hardest things I had to do. Um, I think the thought behind a marriage or the perfect marriage is that everything is always going to go right, everything is always going to go smooth.
Right.
You're going to have this open line of communication. You're going to love that person every day. You're going to like that person every day. You're going to want to be in that person's skin.
Mm.
And you're not. You're not going to want to be in that person's skin. Everything will not be smooth every day.
Right.
It's just that's just not how life goes. Um, and I'm not sure if you would want it to go that way because if everything was going smooth in a marriage, 24/7, 365, you've never had any issues, no problems. You don't know how that person handles conflict.
Right.
You don't know how that person handles disappointment.
Right.
I think it's important for there to be stumbling blocks at, some points in your marriage because it teaches you about yourself and about each other. Brandon is right. I am the type of person that if we're having a disagreement and I don't want to talk about it anymore, some time passed, I'll move on. Um, there's no resolution. We just was mad. You let me take a nap. I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna feel better about it. He is not that type of person. He is the epitome of no, we're gonna talk about this because we're not going to sleep upset. I sleep just fine upset. So snore even. So I like to blame my Aquarius nature for that. I don't think that's what it is, but we'll blame it on that. I can go to sleep,
Yeah.
wake, wake. What? I wake up just fine. What? You still mad? Wow, let's go get something to eat. So I'm that type of person. Like it wasn't nothing to get, that upset about. But
Drives
he's
me crazy.
he's the type of person who's like, no, we got to finish this. We're not gonna run past this.
Because I know it's gonna come back up in 3 months down the line.
Or I'll be like, no, we're not. Give me a hug. You love hugs. Come on, come on. He's like, no, we are not. I know what you're trying to do. And he says, I know what you're trying to do. No. And I'm like, oh, we gotta talk about it. Okay. Which is weird because I love talking about emotion. I love talking about the good of emotion, the
The
best.
irony, the
Hmm.
irony of it all.
Right. It's very weird. I like talking about my emotions, how I feel, putting the truth out there. I always say, show up, be you. If I feel some type of way about something, I'm going to say it until I don't feel that way anymore. And then it's just like, but even in that, I had to learn, we do have to talk about this. We do have to come to a resolution because, like you said, it'll come up later on. And I think when you learn those different things about yourself, one, and your spouse if you have one or if you desire to have one. I think once you learn those things,
Mhm.
it's not going to make it easier because remember what I said at the beginning, marriage is ghetto and the hardest thing I ever had to do. Um and I'm sure there are millions of couples out there who agree. And it doesn't always mean, I just don't want them anymore
Right.
or and I'm tired of this. I feel like moving on to the next person. It's not always that. It's
Mhm.
just you are learning to go through life with another individual who may not was raised like you, who doesn't think like you. And honestly, do you really want them to? Do you
Mhm.
really want them to think like you and
Right.
you don't. You need that balance. So,
Right.
I would go and say that if you are married and you're contemplating divorce and if you feel like that's the right thing for you to do and you've done everything you needed to do to fix the situation, if that's where you feel like you need to go, okay. Okay, like Brandon said, I do not I'm not in everybody's home. I don't know what goes on in everyone's marriage. So if you're at the
Right.
point where you're like, no, I'm done, I support you.
Yeah.
Um, if you feel like you've done all you did to stand and you're still not standing,
Yeah.
do what's best for your mental health and for the other person's mental health. Um,
Because
but
because one person can't fix the marriage by themselves.
right, so if you're at that point where you're like, no, I think it's time, please do what you need to do. Um, but I would say be realistic
Right.
about it. And for the people who are not married, talk to people who are realistic about it before you decide to get married or before you get married. Because like I
Mhm.
said, no one ever really gave me the hard talk.
Right.
No one, and I don't know if people don't do that because they don't want to scare you out of it or they don't want to come off like a negative Nancy or they don't want you to think that something's wrong with their marriage. But it's the truth of it. It is hard. It is a full-time job. It has its ups, it has its downs like everything else. It seems like too much work. It is a lot of work. I
Mhm.
oftentimes say it is not for the faint at heart.
Right.
It is a lot of work. It's rewarding.
Mhm.
Um, you know, God instituted marriage. It is beautiful,
Mhm.
but it is hard. But even with knowing that it's hard, you pick your hard.
But I think just kind of think about it now. I think the reason why people try to avoid, giving their premarital counseling on the hardships of marriage is because if they give you a blueprint of the hardships, what that person will try to do now is try to prevent those hardships. So like, okay, okay,
Okay, I didn't think about it
if,
like
if
that.
I'm getting ready to, if we're gonna have this type of thing, okay, they told me about this. Okay, let me figure out how to navigate to get away from it. But some things, best lessons, sometimes just to go through it,
Go through it.
and instead of trying to avoid it, because the more you know at the beginning, and it's kind of like faith. If you knew everything in the outset, you would try to avoid certain pitfalls
Mhm.
before you even got there. But it takes faith in the marriage to know that I don't know what's ahead. You don't know what's ahead.
Mhm.
But let's always make sure that we're going to stay ahead of any situation
Mhm.
by saying that we're going through this together. I'm not
Right.
going through this and then I'm having to pull you along the way.
Mm.
No, everyone in their marriage has to carry their own weight. So that's probably why they didn't say anything because, and on top of that, what was hard for them
That's
may
true.
be already resolved for us.
That's
So
true.
everyone's hard is hard. It's different. You just have to
Mhm.
choose your heart.
Choose your heart and choose who you want to do your heart with.
There you go.
That matters too. Um, I would like to think that before me and Brandon started dating and before we got married, that we were friends first.
Right.
And I think that is important to remember the friendship outside of the titles.
Exactly.
Like even now, I can be talking to somebody else and I'll be like, yeah, my brother Brandon said, um, because, and it's very playful, but we were friends. One people have said we looked alike, so we kind of went along with that lie for a while that we were brother and sister. Um, but I think we remember the friendship, and we remember when you remember that foundation of it all,
Right.
like we were friends first. It can kind of help. So if you are dating someone, enjoy that realm of friendship, like date them, but keep it playful, keep
Right.
it just remember that realm so that if you do decide this is the person you want to marry, that you can always think on that when things do get hard. Like, you know what, this is not just my spouse, this is my friend.
Right.
Um, whether you've been dating 6 months and got married or 6 years and got married. Remember that. And I think if you remember the friendship, it kind of keeps you grounded, I
Right.
would say.
Yep.
So we hope that we have given you guys the different colors of marriage. It seemed like most of the colors were a little dark, but we made a conscious effort just to not give the rainbow and
Cookie
sunshine
cutter.
cookie cutter, oh, this is great type of conversation when it comes to marriage. And I think these conversations need to be held more, in the open and in public so that people can have a realistic view from people who are in it. Um or who were in it, who are no longer in it. I
Mhm.
think if we have more of those conversations in the forefront, it may can help
Right.
people when they're going into it or in it and thinking about calling it quits or in
Right.
it and they don't really know what this phase is.
Right.
So they're kind of confused. So I think these conversations can help. Got any closing remarks?
No, man. I'm glad that you brought me on. You deemed me worthy enough to lend your audience to, to what I had to say.
I didn't couldn't think of a better person than the person that I'm married to have this conversation with so that, well, we're kind of in it together. So we kind of, who's the best person to have than the person who's in it with you, right?
Absolutely.
So I do thank you guys for joining us for this episode of Broken Crayon Still Color Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon, uh,
All of them.
all of all social media outlets. You can find us on, follow us on Facebook, and we will see you guys next